Hallo nochmals, hier ist das 30. Video in unserer Reihe und heute besprechen wir Relativsätze. Wir sind auf Seite 109 bis 110 in dem Buch. Und wir beginnen mit guten Nachrichten. Das ist, Sie kennen schon fast alle Wörter, die wir heute besprechen. You already know most of the relative pronouns. That's because they look a lot like our definite articles. In fact, all but 5 of them are the same. In the same place, they look exactly the same. And for those that are hard to remember because they look a little different from the definite articles, there's a hint. You'll notice that in the plural dative and in all of the genitive, there is sometimes a letter we add to the noun. So ich spiele mit den Kindern. I add an N to the word Kinder. Well, for the relative pronoun, we're going to steal that little N and attach it to the pronoun. The same thing goes with the S's in the genitive. So das ist die Tasse des Professors. I would say dessen for the pronoun, and I'm stealing that S and sticking it inside the word. So that's how I remember them, but you can find your own way to remember the differences between relative pronouns and definite articles. There's only really 5 little variations. And to use definite articles, or rather to use relative pronouns, you're going to have to think about the purpose and the function of these words. A relative pronoun connects, relates to a previous noun that's been used already. It connects 2 ideas here. Und es zeigt ein Verhältnis, es weist auf ein Verhältnis zwischen dem Bezugswort, this is the antecedent, und einer anderen grammatischen Einheit. So it connects a previous word to this word. Und hier haben wir ein Beispiel. Ich bin der Mensch liebt den Herbst. Und die Frage natürlich ist, was haben die 2 Sätze gemeinsam? What's common between the 2 sentences? Oh ja, und wir kennen das schon. Der Mensch existiert in beiden Sätzen. Das ist gemeinsam. Und der Mensch in dem zweiten Satz weist auf den Menschen in dem ersten Satz. It connects to that previous idea. If we were to take the second sentence and relate it to the first, this would be our logical connection point, the point of the sentences that are the same. So you'll notice that both of these words, because they're the same, because they're common between the sentences, they share gender and they share number. They have the same grammatical gender, the same number. So a strategy that some people employ to begin with is to just say the same word twice in your head, but only once aloud. So, ich bin der Mensch, der liebt den Herz. That's a problem, though. The problem is Wortstellung, because these are going to be relative clauses, and relative clauses are Nebensätze, which means that their verb is at the end. So strategy 1 is going to get you into some trouble. A better strategy is to think it through. So, wir haben den Zweck und die Funktion besprochen. Das Pronomen verknüpft 2 Ideen zusammen. Das bezieht sich auf einem Bezugswort. Das Relativpronomen hat eine eigene Funktion, eine eigene Rolle in dem Satz. Und das Bezugswort hat auch eine Funktion und die Funktion ist nicht immer das gleiche. Also wir haben hier eine Frage. Was macht der Mensch in dem ersten Satz und was macht der Mensch in dem zweiten Satz? In dem ersten Satz ist das ein Prädikatsnominativ und in dem zweiten Satz ist das ein Subjekt. So, wir sehen, dass obwohl beide Wörter das gleiche Wort sind, sie verschiedene Funktionen haben. So, how are we going to decide which form to use? The form is going to be determined by 2 factors, gender and case. So, and we're including in the idea of gender number because we recognize that plural in German is treated as a gender. We have masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural. So we're going to think about the gender, and then the case describes what the job is in the sentence. Since the antecedent and the relative pronoun can have different jobs in the sentence, they're going to perhaps have different cases, but they'll have the same gender, the same number. So we'll begin here with our example. Ich bin der Mensch liebt den Herbst. Und we've already said that der Mensch in the second sentence weist auf das Wort der Mensch in the first sentence. It points to it, it refers to it. Sie sind beide maskulin. And now if they were die Frau or das Kind, of course then it would be feminine or neuter. So the point is that they have the same gender regardless of what word they are. Und sie haben eine eigene Funktion. Hier, der Mensch in dem ersten Satz war Nominativ und in dem zweiten Satz war das auch Nominativ. That doesn't always have to be that way, but it happens to be in this example. So which pronoun are we going to use that refers to a masculine thing in the nominative case? If we were to say, ich bin der Mensch, and replace it with just a pronoun that refers to der Mensch, I would say, ich bin er, or I could say, ich bin der Mensch. Right? The same word is the one we're going to use in the second sentence. Ich bin der Mensch, der den Herbst liebt. And here we've gotten to that same problem we were at before with the strategy number 1. Das sind noch 2 Sätze und wir wollen einen einzigen Satz machen und wir müssen Form und Wortstellung im Sinne halten. Und Form haben wir schon erledigt. Das ist maskulin, Nominativ. Wie machen wir eine Wortstellungs-Decision? Wie stellen wir das Wort an der richtigen Stelle? Stellung in dem Satz von einem Relativpronomen und von dem ganzen Relativsatz ist logisch mit dem Zweck verbunden. That means that we get the idea of the placement of a relative pronoun and the whole relative clause in the bigger sentence from its purpose. The purpose was to connect to the antecedent. So it's going to be as close to the antecedent as possible. There are some exceptions. If you have a separable prefix or something, and a dependent infinitive, you don't want to separate that. So you don't stick the relative clause right next to the antecedent all the time if it causes the sentence to be split up in a weird way. But generally speaking, we want der Mensch and der to be close together. Und wir haben verschiedene anderen Sachen, die wir sagen wollen. We want to say lots of other things. So der Mensch smiles when it's cold. He wears a pulli. He likes to look at colorful leaves. Aber wir stellen diese Sachen beiseite. We're going to let those be off to the side for a moment. Und wir stellen das Relativpronomen und den Relativsatz zusammen mit dem Bezugswort. So we're going to put the relative clause next to the Bezugswort, as close to it as we can get without making the sentence sound weird. Then we have to rearrange the words within the relative clause to make sure that they have the right structure there. And that is simply to put the verb on the end. So das Verb geht am Ende. Then we transform whatever period was there into a comma. And we'll do the same with the last comma, with the last period, if we're going to continue the sentence. So if I have an example here, der Mensch, der den Herbst liebt, and if I'm going to continue the sentence, which I would here because that isn't a complete idea, I'm going to begin then with a verb. And you're going to end up with a structure that looks like verb, comma, verb. So there are some special rules to think of and to keep in mind. Präpositionen haben einen Einfluss auf dem Relativpronomen. And I have here an example. Der Mensch, mit dem wir sprechen, liebt den Herbst. And we say dem here instead of another pronoun because it has to be the object of a preposition, and this preposition is dative. So we're going to choose masculine dative. It's going to be dame. But if the pronoun is in the genitive, a preposition will influence the next noun over. And this is really a very unusual situation. You don't get this very often, but it's often enough that you need to know how to use it. If I want to say, so there's a man and he's got a dog and we're playing with that man's dog, but I want to use a sentence like, the man whose dog we're playing with. That's a fairly elegant sentence. We're going to say, der Mensch mit dessen Hund wir spielen. Dessen refers to the man, and mit is influencing the dog because we're playing with the dog. We're not playing with the man. We're playing with the dog that belongs to the man. So dessen there is giving an attribute to the dog. It's saying it's his dog. And so it's not influenced by mit. A way to think about this would be, in English, if you're going to say who or that, it's going to be influenced by the preposition. But if you're going to say whose, then it's independent from that preposition. It won't matter. As I said, this is kind of a more refined problem to get into, but the genitive, if you're going to use relative pronouns with a genitive, they're not going to be influenced by prepositions. Okay, there's some more special rules here. If you begin with any of these words, if any of the words like alles, einiges, etwas, manches, if these kinds of words are your Bezugswort, your antecedent, then the relative pronoun you use isn't like a definite article, because these are not definite things. So we're not going to use a definite article to refer to them. We will use the word was. And the equivalent of this in English would be which. So that is all which I have to say. It sounds awkward in English, but it's the correct usage in German. Das ist alles, was ich zu sagen habe. If I said das ist alles, das ich zu sagen habe, it might be confusing because alles is not definite. It's an indefinite pronoun. And so if I'm going to refer to an indefinite pronoun, I want to use a relative pronoun that's not like a definite article. It's not definite. Und was would be the equivalent. This is really most common when you use a superlative. You're going to say, that's the best thing I ever heard of. Your structure is going to be, that's the best which I have ever heard of. So, das ist das Beste, was ich gehört habe. Now, we've got a chance to üben. We're going to practice. I want you to make a comment on this video in which you use a relative pronoun. This means that you are going to say something like, that was the best video which I've ever seen, right? Presumably you'll say that. So leave a comment on the video, and you're now ready to do your next quiz, which is about relative pronouns.